New details have emerged on the Aaron Rodgers saga and how the four-time NFL MVP ended up landing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll be breaking that down at the top of today's show. Then I'm going to explain to you guys why Jaire Alexander will not be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025. And then we'll get into the latest Steelers wide receiver buzz at the end of today's show, so make sure you guys stick around for some new wide receiver targets for your Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, new details did emerge on the Rodgers saga from Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer this morning, and he had some very interesting insights into what the Steelers were thinking, why the Steelers waited so long, why they felt so comfortable waiting for Rodgers, and why they feel like Rodgers elevates the quarterback room heading into the 2025 season. Let's start with this from Breer. Rodgers' name first arose as the Steelers went through initial end-of-season evaluations. Pittsburgh was moving on from Russell Wilson. The Steelers did want to keep working with Justin Fields, but knew if another team was willing to make him the guy, they'd have a hard time keeping him. So in other words, when it came to the Justin Fields thing, guys, the Steelers were willing to give him pretty much a backup level contract. And what their plan was, if Fields wanted to take that contract, they would have brought in another veteran quarterback to compete with Fields for the starting quarterback position. Hell, it might have been Rodgers as well. But Pittsburgh was not going to guarantee Fields the job, and they didn't feel like he was ready to be, handed the starting position. They didn't feel like he was a bona fide franchise quarterback yet, and they didn't want to pay him like that. So when the Jets said, we'll pay you $20 million to be our franchise quarterback, and we'll guarantee you our starting position, obviously, Fields was going to go to New York, and honestly, if you're not willing to, pay $20 million for a quarterback, guys, the Steelers didn't really believe in Justin Fields either. So, moving on here, the Steelers touched base with the Rams on Stafford, but never believed Stafford would sign off on leaving L.A. Meanwhile, they stayed in touch with Fields' camp as the Jets came with an offer of $20 million per season and the promise of being their undisputed starter, which is important to Fields. By then, the Steelers were in discussions with Rodgers. So essentially, by the time that the Fields negotiations were happening, the Steelers had already moved on to Aaron Rodgers at that point. So essentially what they did was that they kicked the tires on Matthew Stafford, kind of got the sense that Stafford didn't want to leave LA, and then after that, they shifted their focus to Aaron Rodgers, especially when Justin Fields wasn't going to take their lowball offer. Breer also says this: their study of Rodgers showed a little more than even they expected. Early in the 2024 season, the Achilles and a hamstring injury to follow clearly hampered him. But as time wore on, even with the Jets struggling, the Steelers saw Rodgers returning to form. And as you guys can see last year, Aaron Rodgers' numbers, very similar, the 2024 stats to his 2022 stats with Green Bay. And, people will look at the numbers here and, ever since his MVP season back in 2021, the numbers just haven't been the same in the last 3 seasons. But he's also dealt with injuries over these last 3 seasons. Back in 2022, in the London game versus the New York Football Giants, he broke his thumb on his throwing hand and continued to play on it, leading to some, lackluster weeks and I think a 5-game losing streak during that 2022 season while Rodgers was recovering. They ended up winning 4 of their final 5 games, and Rodgers nearly willed that Green Bay Packer team without Davante Adams, by the way, to a playoff victory. Then in 2023, of course, he tore his Achilles and he only played 4 snaps. And then in 2024, not only was he recovering from that same Achilles tear, but he also had a hamstring injury that he was dealing with. Plus, there was a ton of team instability. They had no run game. They didn't have, the coaching staff was completely shifting. They changed head coaches and offensive coordinators during the season. And the defense, guys, that Jets defense, a lot of people think it's pretty good. It was bottom 10 in the National Football League last year by most metrics. So listen, man, we haven't seen a healthy Aaron Rodgers play in the National Football League since 2021. Now, listen, I know that the devil's advocates are going to be saying, oh, well, it's been 3 straight seasons where he hasn't been healthy, so he's injury prone. And that, 41 years old, he is getting older. He is more injury prone at this point in his career. But if Rodgers can stay healthy in Pittsburgh, I think he has a chance to be pretty darn good. And it seems like the Steelers agree with me on that because Breer says here the Steelers were willing to wait, knowing what the payoff would be. Neither side was moved much at all by the speculation, hysteria, and projection that resulted from the situation. Rodgers would call Tomlin and Smith every now and again, which colors why the Steelers were never really concerned that Rodgers would back out on them. So in other words here, guys, the Steelers knew Rodgers was coming. Rodgers gave them every single indication that he was going to be signing with the team. So even though the fan base was freaking out and saying, we don't want your ass and all this different stuff, give up on him, all this different stuff, the Steelers were like, Rodgers is our guy, and he's giving us every indication that he's going to sign with this football team, so we're going to stand pat, and that patience was rewarded with a contract that was signed by Rodgers last week. So Breer continues here with the reasons why the Steelers were willing to wait. One thing that helped with what was Smith's relationship with two of Rodgers' three most recent play callers, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay and Todd Downing in New York. Both were Titans staff mates of Smith's, and their assessments of Rodgers as a football brilliant quarterback matched up. So listen, man, I think that Rodgers and Smith are going to be a good pairing. Rodgers talked about their renewed friendship on the Pat McAfee show earlier this offseason. And, Smith does run not exactly the same offense as Matt LaFleur does in Green Bay, but something very similar where it's a lot of play action, a lot of under center, really prioritizes throwing the ball over the middle of the field. And, of course, the last time we saw a healthy Aaron Rodgers in that type of offense, he was winning league MVPs. Not to say he's going to do that in Pittsburgh, but that was kind of the offense where he had the most success most recently. So I do think this is a good pairing. Breer also says this, the fact that so much of this stayed quiet, in fact, a testament to the trust that the Steelers and Rodgers built over a short time. And now on Tuesday, it'll be unveiled for everyone to see. So the fact that, Rodgers and the Steelers were able to keep a lot of this under wraps certainly shows the trust that this team and this quarterback have in each other. And it certainly is showing a good start to this relationship. And listen, man, you can disagree with the Steelers' decision to go with Aaron Rodgers and to make him kind of their guy for this season, but you can't deny, after the Matthew Stafford situation wasn't going to end with him wearing a Steelers uniform, they identified their guy early on, and it was Aaron Rodgers, and they were willing to be patient to get their guy in the building and be their starting quarterback. And listen, man, if you get pretty much your number one quarterback target on the free agency market, especially for the contract that you got him for, just $10 million guaranteed, about $14 million total in salary, and then up to around $20 million with incentives, like that is a hell of a steal for a starting quarterback that is a top 10 QB in NFL history. I think the Steelers definitely feel like this is a success. So fill in the blank for me down there in the comments section. Aaron Rodgers is a top blank quarterback in the NFL right now. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. This will be in just a second here. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time. But let me know where you think Rodgers ranks among NFL signal callers. Another kind of tidbit to watch out for tomorrow when the pictures and the videos get released of Rodgers throwing to his Steelers teammates for the first time at Steelers mandatory minicamp. He will be wearing a new helmet. His previous helmet model, the Schutt Air Pro XP11, whatever it's called, is now banned by the National Football League. So he's got pretty much two options. The first one being the Schutt F7, formerly worn by Josh Dobbs, was the last Steelers quarterback to wear this type of helmet. It's usually not one worn by quarterbacks, but there are certain quarterbacks that wear this. Drake May wears this model. Andy Dalton wears this model. But if he wants to wear a Schutt, this is the one that he's pretty much going to have to wear. It's the only Schutt helmet currently in circulation that's legal and is used by current NFL quarterbacks. And then there's the Visus 02, which was worn by Russell Wilson. It's also worn by other top quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. Aaron Rodgers invested in the Visus company a couple years back. He even wore a Visus helmet in a State Farm commercial a couple of years ago. So expect to see him either in that Visus tomorrow or in the Schutt. He did say on the McAfee show earlier this offseason, though, that if he can wear a Schutt, he's going to wear a Schutt. So that is probably my guess heading into tomorrow. Now, still to come here on Steelers Talk on today's edition of News and Rumors. Why I think the Steelers will not sign Jaire Alexander, and then we got the latest Steelers wide receiver buzz to go over. But hey, before we get into that, if you want your Aaron Rodgers jersey today, they're officially available from our friends at Fanatics. Just go to chatsports.com/AR8. That is our special link. If you click that link, I'm putting that in the comments and description of today's show. You click that link and you make a purchase. Fanatics sends us part of the proceeds. So if you're excited about the Rodgers era here in Pittsburgh and you want to get an Aaron Rodgers jersey today, you can go chatsports.com/AR8 to get it done. So now let's talk about Jaire Alexander, because the Green Bay Packers released Alexander earlier today, and now there's a lot of teams and a lot of fan bases around the league discussing whether or not their teams should consider bringing him on in NFL free agency because he's now an open free agent. And Alexander, when he's on the field, is one of the best corners in the National Football League. The problem is he's always hurt and he barely stays on the field. But if you're a team that is in desperate need of a legit number one corner, Alexander absolutely provides that for you if you are able to sign him. But I'm going to tell you guys this right now. Pittsburgh is not going to make a play for Jaire Alexander. Now, I know some people want the team to because they don't believe in Joey Porter Jr. or they don't believe in Darius Slay or they want to get more depth for the future at this position. But plain and simply, guys, Pittsburgh already has their 2 starting outside cornerbacks, and I don't think Alexander wants to go to a team where he has to compete for a starting job. He wants guarantees, and I don't think the Steelers would be willing to just straight up bench Darius Slay, who they brought in free agency on the promise he'd be a starter, or Joey Porter Jr., who Mike Tomlin still clearly believes in as a third-year player coming in. Also, Jaire likely wants to get paid a big contract. It's one of the reasons why a restructure and a reworking of his contract in Green Bay didn't work is because they wanted him to take less money and he wasn't willing to do it. The Steelers really, I think they're trying to save their money for a wide receiver acquisition. And then also Pittsburgh's top 2 priorities this offseason are to get that TJ Watt extension done and then to get another offensive weapon for Aaron Rodgers in the Steelers offense. Getting another corner is definitely not on their list of priorities at the moment. And my biggest takeaway from the whole of Jaire Alexander news situation today, actually, is that if Green Bay's willing to part ways with Jaire Alexander, their bona fide number 1 corner on their roster, they're probably willing to, at least listen to trade offers for their wide receiver 4 or number 5 receiver as well. You take a look at their wide receiver room right now. They just drafted Matthew Golden in the first round out of Texas. He's probably their future number 1 guy. Jaden Reed, somebody they really believe in. He's their number 2. Christian Watson's dealing with an injury right now. Might be out several weeks to start the season, but when he's back, he will be their number 3. But then you got Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks as those 4 and 5 guys, and Savion Williams, McCole Hardman, and Bo Melton kind of round out their depth. But last year, Romeo Doubs complained to the Green Bay Packers and even missed practices. He got suspended last year for missing practices because he was frustrated with the lack of targets he was getting in the Packers offense, and they've only added to the wide receiver room now. So that seems like, kind of a bomb waiting to go off there in Green Bay. And, the Steelers would be giving him plenty of opportunities to work with a former quarterback that he's worked with before in Aaron Rodgers, who he had a really good chemistry with in his rookie season back in 2022, and he shouldn't be that expensive for the Steelers to acquire either. Plus, he's only 25 years old, so Doubs is an excellent trade option for the Steelers. But then if, let's say, they want Doubs and they don't want to get rid of him, Dontavian Wicks is a really good run blocker, physical wide receiver that runs really good routes, has a little bit of a ball skills issue and a drop issue, but I would probably rather have Doubs because I think he's got better hands and he has the connection with Rodgers. Wicks does not. But those are the 2 guys that I would definitely be looking at. And then another team to watch via a wide receiver trade, in my opinion, that we haven't really talked about on the show is the Carolina Panthers, all right? Because this is another wide receiver room that is starting to fill up with young talent. Not only did they draft Tedorora McMillan in the first round this year, but they also drafted Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker last year. And then you got Jimmy Horn Jr. and Kobe Hudson, who they drafted this year. And then they bring in Hunter Renfrow, another slot wide receiver. So guys like Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker, and maybe even Xavier Legette could all be potentially gettable on the trade market. Thielen is somebody the Steelers were really interested in towards the trade deadline last year. He's somebody that's not the best athlete. He honestly never was, but he's a really crafty route runner with excellent hands, can play both inside and out, even though he's known more as a slot specialist. Jalen Coker is kind of an Adam Thielen clone, only younger, in my opinion. Then Xavier Legette is more of a DK Metcalf type, so honestly, he wouldn't be my preferred option if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he is somebody that's very physically gifted. Personally, I continue to like the Amari Cooper fit. We're going to continue to talk about different possibilities on this show, but Aaron Rodgers typically likes a bigger route-running wide receivers. Just look at Devontae Adams, who is his number 1 favorite target of all time, a bigger route runner type of receiver. And also, Rodgers has been a big fan of Amari Cooper his entire career. He said on the Pat McAfee show back in 2023, quote, "I've always been a big fan of Cooper's." And, if you're trying to make Aaron Rodgers happy, I think that you want to get him a route runner, a veteran kind of savvy route runner type of guy like Amari Cooper. Cooper's no longer a number one wide receiver, but the Steelers wouldn't be asking him to be that, all right? You got DK Metcalf as your number one weapon. I think Cooper's skill set as a route runner would be very, very complementary to DK in this offense, and I think that he is the type of big route running threat that Aaron Rodgers typically likes to throw to in the offense. So I think that Amari Cooper would probably be my preferred option at this point. So who's your guy? Let me know down there in the comments section. Which weapon or weapons are you hoping the Steelers land this offseason? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Again, tomorrow we're going to have extensive mandatory minicamp coverage for Aaron Rodgers' first day as a Steeler officially. Going to practice, all that different stuff. We'll have all the photos, all the analysis, all that stuff for you guys tomorrow. So click that subscribe button to never miss a moment.